2:47 a.m., a message arrived at Cheating Story Lab. Recording uploaded, watch this immediately. Normally, communications from my attorney don't occur during the night unless there's an urgent catastrophe. As my heart quickened, I awoke in the dimly lit guest room of my brother's apartment and opened the encrypted link. The next 90 seconds revealed why she disturbed her sleep. My soon-to-be ex-wife was hosting a party at our home, with our two sleeping children residing upstairs. However, this explanation didn't justify my attorney's broken routine. My name is Trevor Ashford. 6 months ago, I believed I had my life perfectly orchestrated. A 15-year marriage to Cassandra, 2 kids, Brooke aged 9 and Tyler aged 7, a software consulting firm I'd meticulously constructed from the ground up, and a residence in an area boasting top-tier schools. Although my workdays were lengthy, I assumed such was the commitment required when constructing something. I thought returning home exhausted signified provision. I thought my wife comprehended this. 14 months into our marriage, I greatly misjudged her comprehension. Issues initially emerged subtly, as they often do. Cassandra grew distant, neglected to inquire about my day, and increased her book club attendance to 3 times a week. I chose to believe that these behaviors were normal, attributing them to the evolution of marriage and the need for individual pursuits. Her irregular gym visits I attributed to prioritizing health, while her secrecy regarding her phone made me paranoid. It wasn't until she requested space, on a Tuesday in April, that she sat me down to express her need for separation, not divorce. She clarified, merely space. She suggested I temporarily move out so we could work things through. She would remain in the house with the children to maintain their routine, and I would see them every other weekend. In that instant, still under the delusion that rational individuals were at play, it seemed a reasonable solution. After a week, I shifted to my brother Kyle's extra room. 3 days afterward, she petitioned for divorce. I should have anticipated it, but the entanglement makes it hard to see. Her attorney, Preston Whitmore, a formidable figure in high-asset divorce cases, was aggressive from the start. She demanded sole physical custody, with me restricted to supervised visits. She sought ownership of the house, purchased before our relationship using funds from my initial business sale. Moreover, she wanted 70% of my current business equity, arguing her career had been compromised for mine. Furthermore, she requested spousal support that would exceed my mortgage expenses, a considerable amount. The divorce papers included charges of emotional abuse and negligence, unprovable claims but sufficient to cast doubts on me in a family court, justifying her custody demands. During our initial strategy meeting, my lawyer, Patricia Chen, was straightforward. In your proposed narrative, you're portrayed as a busy professional father, while she is the resilient caregiver managing everything seamlessly. Despite progress in family courts regarding gender bias, a devoted mother still resonates favorably with judges. It's crucial to question her suitability instead of just validating yours. However, Tricia expressed her doubts about unearthing anything incriminating against Cassandra. She suggested either finding potential evidence or waiting for a lapse from her side. Skeptical of this approach, you pondered about the significant legal expenses Cassandra had incurred and where she was sourcing the funds, as well as her sudden self-assurance in gaining full custody and the swiftness with which she initiated proceedings after your departure. I became aware that I had lost track of what was happening within my home. The following day, I contacted a friend from college, Owen, who runs a private security company. We had parted ways after he joined the military and I pursued tech. Asking him about a hypothetical scenario regarding property monitoring during a divorce, Owen suggested it could be defensible with concerns over children's well-being, despite legal uncertainties. He then offered an estimation of how challenging this setup would theoretically be, for professionals like himself, extremely difficult. However, he mentioned that installation of a system streaming directly to encrypted cloud storage, with motion-activated night vision and audio, depending on local consent laws, could be done in less than an hour for me. Reflecting briefly on this possibility for 10 seconds, I decided I needed this not as a theoretical but practical solution. We held off until Cassandra left the kids with her mother during our temporary custody weekend. Upon arrival, Owen transported gear in an undecorated van. Cameras were strategically placed in the living room, kitchen, and both upstairs corridors, excluding bedrooms and bathrooms to avoid privacy infringement, instead capturing activities within shared spaces of my home. Each camera was compact yet costlier than my first car. Owen clarified as he linked the feeds that the footage aimed to uncover signs of unfitness, such as substance abuse inviting harmful individuals near the children or neglect. With timestamped records, Our lawyer would decide what evidence was acceptable. On the brink of terminating this operation, I was struck by feelings of violation and suspicion mirroring a surveillance state. However, considering Cassandra's accusations in her filing and her attorney's assertive custody tactics, I reconsidered. On Sunday night, I activated the cameras as I pondered my children being unsupervised in a house I no longer controlled. The initial week revealed no unusual activity. Cassandra adhered to a familiar routine, waking up and dropping off the kids at school, picking them up, preparing dinner, overseeing their homework, and putting them to bed on time. During my free moments, I observed her via my phone, oscillating between guilt and relief. Perhaps my apprehension was misplaced. Maybe this was all redundant. However, Friday arrived, and while skimming through the week's recordings, I detected an anomaly. Cassandra had a guest on Thursday night. A man in his early 30s showed up at 9:47 p.m. after the kids were asleep. They conversed for approximately an hour on my couch, nothing obviously inappropriate but disturbingly intimate, causing my stomach to churn. This was the personal space she required. 11:15 p.m. on a Wednesday, I received an alert about motion detected in my kitchen. On a client call at the time, I marked it to review later. At 1:30 a.m., I watched the footage and saw Cassandra and a man named Dylan Burke from her gym sitting at my kitchen table. A small mirror with white residue and lines was between them. The video quality was clear, and the evidence of Cassandra using cocaine was undeniable. The timestamp revealed that my children were asleep upstairs, just 30 feet away from their mother's drug use in our family kitchen. In our state, infidelity doesn't justify fitness challenges, but this discovery affected the children, which I needed to find. I observed her bending over with a rolled banknote, saw her lean back and chuckle, noticed Dylan preparing another line as she glanced at her phone. This continued for 40 minutes. When I phoned Patricia, it was nearly 2 in the morning, but it couldn't be delayed. She picked up on the third ring. This had better be important. I have a video of Cassandra using cocaine in our home while the children were asleep upstairs. A pause followed. Then send me the link immediately without contacting anyone else. Don't disclose this to anyone. Send me the link and then try to sleep, though I realize you won't. I transmitted it. I didn't sleep. The following morning, Patricia called me at 6:30 a.m. She had watched it 8 times. She confirmed our investigator verified the metadata. This is admissible evidence. This could be criminal, and this is precisely what we required, though I wish to God we didn't require it. What occurs next? Now we gather all details. How many cameras do you have at your place? 5 instances occurred, necessitating continuous vigilance as they might indicate a pattern. One occurrence is significant, but multiple occurrences can potentially jeopardize a custody claim. Over a 3-week period, there were 4 additional incidents, twice involving Dylan, once with an unrecognized woman, and once most incriminatingly by herself on a Tuesday night. Each event transpired in the kitchen after 10 p.m. while the children were upstairs. Assuming false security, she thought she was alone, misjudging my attentiveness. I had not been disregarding her accusations as she presumed. Patricia promptly filed an emergency motion for full custody with supervised visitation for Cassandra. We held back the video evidence for later use. Our priority was securing a safe environment for the children first. The judge approved a temporary hearing scheduled for the following week, based on freshly uncovered evidence regarding child welfare issues. Cassandra's legal representative contacted Patricia the day after we filed. Despite not being on the call, Patricia recounted the discussion where Whitmore appeared agitated, questioning any viable evidence. This seemed like a desperate act from a father about to lose custody, fearing repercussions for baseless motions. Patricia advised your client to ready their defense. The hearing, deemed frivolous by Whitmore, was scheduled on Thursday at 2 p.m. in the family court. Leisha Brennan would preside, marking my first experience in a courtroom and, more significantly, the venue deciding my children's future in just one afternoon. Kyle drove me. I donned the navy suit Patricia had instructed for court appearances, opting for professional attire devoid of flash or expense. Arriving 40 minutes ahead, Cassandra and Whitmore arrived later by 15 minutes. Her self-assured demeanor was striking in my memory. In a modest dress, her hair neatly tied back, she strode in, embodying the devoted mother that her lawyer was portraying to the court. As our eyes met in the hallway, she offered me a subtle, sympathetic smile, the kind one gives when someone is unaware they're on the verge of losing. I ought to have smiled back, but instead I merely nodded and looked away. We were summoned at 2:17 p.m. Judge Brennan, in her late 50s with steel gray hair and reading glasses hanging on a chain, studied our case briefly before addressing us. This hearing concerns an emergency motion filed by Trevor Ashford, petitioner, seeking full custody with supervised visitation for Cassandra Ashford, respondent. Mr. Whitmore, I've reviewed your counterargument. You argue this motion is retaliatory and without foundation. Ms. Chen, you assert you have evidence of child endangerment. Let's begin with that. What proof do you have? Patricia rose to speak. Your Honor, we possess video surveillance from Mr. Ashford. The contested house, still owned by Ashford under legal terms, revealed instances of Ms. Ashford using illegal drugs over a 3-week period, with minors present at home. In the courtroom, Whitmore jumped up, asserting to the judge that such allegations were unfounded and manipulated. He claimed his client had no record of drug use. However, they hadn't yet seen this so-called evidence, Judge Brennan retorted. Ms. Chen assumed she brought the video. Yes, she confirmed, presenting it marked with appropriate timestamps and providing copies to both counsel and the court. The following minutes, though they might have seemed like hours, were spent in the judge's chambers, where a bailiff set up a laptop, and Patricia played the first video file, untouched apart from timestamp annotations. We viewed the footage dating back to the first Wednesday night. 11:43 p.m., the kitchen, mirrors reflecting Cassandra and Dylan, both visible. The conversation about the source of the high-quality drugs and whether to do more before his departure. Cassandra's face pale, Whitmore's jaw tightening audibly. You begin, Your Honor, but Judge Brennan silences you. Over several videos, more instances spanning the next 3 weeks were recorded. By the third video, Cassandra was quietly sobbing, and by the fifth, even Whitmore looked sick. Removing her glasses, Judge Brennan asks directly under oath, is that you in these videos? In a soft voice, Cassandra admits it. Yes, was cocaine use happening in your home while your children were sleeping upstairs? On rare occasions, they were oblivious, not aware of what I inquired about. Cassandra shut her eyes. Indeed, the judge addressed Whitmore, Counselor, does your client possess any reasonable justification that would reassure this court to grant unmonitored access to minor children? Whitmore seemed to have aged a decade and more in those minutes. In truth, Your Honor, my client has indeed committed grave lapses in judgment, yet this is her initial indiscretion, the judge corrected. We remain uncertain about the duration of these actions, only aware that they occurred at least 5 times within 3 weeks, a pattern rather than an isolated incident. Turning to Patricia, she asked for what? Full physical and legal custody to Mr. Ashford, immediate effect, with supervised visits for Ms. Ashford until completion of a comprehensive substance abuse evaluation and treatment program. Additionally, we request the court to order a child welfare inquiry. Judge Brennan gave a slow nod. Ms. Ashford, here's the situation. Starting now, full custody transfers to your husband. You will have only supervised visits with your children for 2 hours twice a week, under the watch of a court-appointed supervisor. You must submit to immediate drug testing and complete a full substance abuse evaluation within 30 days. You cannot be alone with your children until this court is convinced you've completed treatment and remained sober for at least 6 months. Do you comprehend? Cassandra nodded, still crying. I require you to verbalize it. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. Mr. Ashford will keep the family home. You must vacate by the end of business tomorrow. A police escort will be arranged if necessary. The final asset division will be discussed at the settlement conference, but I'll inform you now, Ms. Ashford, that your credibility on all other aspects of this case is compromised. If I were you, I'd pay close attention to any settlement proposal Mr. Ashford makes. Ashford's lawyer presented evidence, directing gaze towards Patricia. Is there anything more? The kids are temporarily staying with Ashford's brother. We seek an immediate police-escorted pickup for safety concerns during the transition. The bailiff will handle arrangements. Judge Brennan collected her papers. This case is also being forwarded to the district attorney's office, Ashford. You may potentially face criminal charges for drug possession and endangerment of children. I strongly advise you to hire separate counsel for these matters. With that, the hearing concluded. A hearing scheduled for 3 days had finished in just 43 minutes. Cassandra avoided my gaze as we left the chamber. Whitmore spoke privately and urgently with Cassandra, muttering phrases about damage control, criminal responsibility, and lack of disclosure. Patricia led me to a secluded area instead. 6 p.m. found you collecting Brooke and Tyler from Kyle's residence under police supervision, anticipating Cassandra's potential presence. The children sensed the atmosphere, questioning what was unfolding, their intuition detecting tension in the air. I explained in a developmentally appropriate manner that Mom had made decisions posing risks, necessitating their stay with me temporarily, while reassuring them they would continue to visit her, albeit under altered circumstances. I promised that things would turn out fine, and Brooke, old enough to grasp subtext, later asked if Mom was in trouble. I responded honestly, "Yes, dear, she is, but it's not as bad as it seems. It's critical, yet she'll seek assistance, and we're committed to looking after you and Tyler." This was the crucial aspect as we returned to the house that now truly felt like home. Cassandra had departed before our arrival, leaving behind her belongings but maintaining the kids' rooms in their original state. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief from this minor concession. 6 weeks later, the settlement conference took place. Cassandra had undergone evaluation, leading to a recommendation for intensive outpatient treatment for substance abuse. She tested clean on 2 occasions, but was still only permitted supervised visits. The children inquired about her, yet they adapted faster than anticipated. Children are remarkably resilient, particularly when the alternative was doubt and tension. Whitmore initiated discussions with a proposition that would have granted Cassandra 40% of my business and $100,000 in cash. Patricia countered this offer. In the proposed settlement, Cassandra would relinquish claims to $25,000, business equity, spousal support, and the house, without any criminal charges for child endangerment being pursued against her. However, Whitmore contended this was unjust as Cassandra possesses marital property rights. Interjecting, Patricia stated that Cassandra had committed numerous felonies during an aggressive custody case based on fabricated allegations, thus losing the court's trust. Given her potential imprisonment, the offer stands only for the next 48 hours. Thereafter, all matters will be brought to court, with a judge determining equitable distribution of assets and visitation rights considering Cassandra's actions harming her children and dishonesty about her husband's conduct. The decision is ultimately yours. 36 hours later, they signed the agreement, and the divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Since then, Cassandra has completed treatment and receives 4-hour unsupervised visits twice a week. She appears to be sober currently, yet she's making an effort. The children undoubtedly love her due to her being their mother, yet they are aware of what transpired in age-suitable terms. They comprehend that I am the secure guardian. They know our home is with me. I sold the cameras but retained all the encrypted footage stored across various locations. My attorney advises keeping it for at least 7 years in case there's a reopening of the case. I fervently hope I never need to review that footage again. When asked if I feel guilty about monitoring my own residence, or if the outcome justifies the means, I find the answer complex. If I were to repeat the action knowing what I know now, the response would be nuanced. I detest that it led to such circumstances. My marriage's demise due to recording my wife's illicit activities, and my children having to cope with their mother's addiction and the chaos it caused. Reflecting on the scenario had she not installed those cameras, if our nanny continued unsupervised with our children, and something untoward occurred, especially during those late nights, it's a possibility that Brooke or Tyler might have been present. Under such circumstances, I would make the same decision without hesitation. At times, safeguarding your children necessitates actions that seem inappropriate at the moment, but eventually prove to be the sole right choice available. Often, the spouse you once knew transforms into a stranger. Frequently, the only way forward is by confronting uncomfortable truths head-on. I secured full custody, my house, and my business. However, what truly matters is that I ensured the safety of our children, and that's the victory that counts. Everything else is merely details.